Impromptu live.
It's Friday afternoon. Hey, and we are actually back live. It's Spencer Foreman and Chris Latham. Chris, it's so good to see you.
How's everybody doing? Doing good.
We are back.
Staying out of trouble.
We are still calling it the Marketing Hub Ideas Show, but there might be some name changes because we were just starting off. First of all, we had a little bit of an impromptu hiatus because of a lot of various things. And I think sometimes that's healthy. But one of the things is that we're both, I would say it's fair. We're both running solopreneur agencies or solopreneur businesses, and a lot of stuff in our personal lives with relationships and moving and all this stuff has been happening. So we both decided to take a little bit of a breather. Also, we wanted to restructure the show a little bit because the new stuff that's happening starting July 5th is going to be at least relevant to a certain degree of what we talk about and how we talk about it. Still around marketing, still around entrepreneurship. But for those who at least were following a little bit with our earlier shows, we really use this more as a conversational show that you could listen to while you're driving, while you're walking, while you're working out, versus a hands-on show, which we kind of do at office hours on Friday mornings. So Chris, first of all, great to see you again.
Likewise. I haven't had the Spencer Foreman voices in my ears other than the Friday mornings.
I know that we were joking about it, but I've been heavily into all the stuff that I can now do in the summertime with my daily walks. And I've been doing this thing called knees over toes, which is trying to train my lower back. Do you know about it? Have you used that?
I know the knees over toes guy. That's a dude in the fitness space who'd like do crazy things and just flopping on his knees to bulletproof your knees.
Bulletproof knees, right. And it's kind of interesting because one of the things I find a parallel, because today's topic, let me just announce this. And by the way, as an aside, we haven't decided if this is a podcast, if it's going to be just internet videos, if it's going to be useful for content. But I figured if we let it go long enough, it'll develop on its own. Today's topic.
Little organic.
Right? Yeah. Can one person run a profitable marketing agency? Earlier today, I had given the office hours and I had talked about essentially the key 4 steps of a relationship with cold leads, warm prospects, customers, recurring customers. And I talked about how you can use the launch kit, soon to be minute launch toolkit as an agency owner to do a lot more stuff. And I think that's going to tie into some of my topics today, because like I found that simplifying and focusing on the human relationship allows me to make a choice for my own personal life about what kind of things to do. And in doing so, it comes down to, here's the knees over toes comparative. I had all these back surgeries. I've been always athletic my whole life. But what I didn't realize, and it took somebody, a single dude, this one dude who had a knee surgery, to show everybody, like the Emperor's New Clothes story, the doctors were not wrong, but weren't right. The surgeons weren't right. The medical technology wasn't right. Like everybody's like, yeah, you got a knee surgery, you're screwed, you'll never walk, you'll never jump, you'll never do anything. And this guy is doing like 10-foot jumps over the rim, and he's just, and the point is, he hacked the system. He figured out a way for his own motives to kind of like ignore all of the naysayers and do it a different way. And I think that that's been not only helpful for me on a physical level and a mental level because of what I've been going through, but like I can bring that over to the way I operate the business instead of having 12 people working for me or 5 people or something else.
And I think a big part in there is it's a bit of having a bit of stubbornness, but stubbornness enough to just keep going with something to make it work, and having that belief in your stubbornness and that this will work out. Because even for like the guy with his knees, like you're being told the doctor said you can't run or walk. Okay, I'm going to prove it wrong because I'm going to go back and run and walk. When people are starting a business, whether you're an entrepreneur starting for the first time, people are going to have doubt in you being able to be successful in what it is that you want to achieve and what you want to do. But you have to be so blindly, you have to blindly believe in yourself, or even be not stubborn. Yeah, stubborn. Pretty much be stubborn enough to keep pushing forward with it, no matter what naysayers say.
I mean, there's a couple ways we can think about this. Like almost all successful business ideas started out with somebody who decided to do it differently, right? And in this particular case, the knees over toes, for those who don't know what this is, in case, and I'm going to, by the way, while we're doing this, I'll add this little window in here, is that the knees over toes guy essentially figured out that there are an infinite amount of like minute muscles, I'm going to pop that in a minute, that are surrounding the knees and the joints and whatever. But for those like me who also had imbalances because of surgeries in the lower back or your different muscles and ligaments, it's almost like your body's a suspension bridge. And if you have imbalances or certain muscles or certain tendons are not tight or loose at the right moment or whatever, it shifts the whole architecture. And almost like you're in Washington, right? So like the Tacoma Narrows Bridge where it started oscillating
From
back
across the border. But you can say it's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa just kind of being straightened back out.
Yeah, and so it just essentially started oscillating with the wind, and the whole thing fell apart. And no matter what the structural engineers did, they just couldn't stop it because they hadn't contemplated that. So in the same way, metaphorically, that this kid just reinvented the system and demonstrated a different way around it, and then everybody suddenly jumps on board. I feel like there's an argument for that as well. With the technology that we have today, if you choose to do so, you can run a successful and profitable business, maybe more profitable with one person instead of having to take on what I like to call the overhead of an agency. You know, the office expense and the people and the payroll and the salary and the blah, blah, blah.
And I think an important part there is when we think of profitable, you know, we're thinking you run a profitable business. Doesn't mean you're making millions and billions of dollars, but when it comes down to the brass tacks of things, you could take home more money than if you decide to build an agency with the added overhead of employees, teams, locations, and you don't even get started on all the software costs to pay for all the extra seats. So although there may not be as many commas, we could have it set up to where you are taking home more money overall.
Yeah. I think what's interesting to me is that in the past I've run not a huge office, but a big enough office in law. Maybe we had about 20 attorneys, and they didn't all work for each other, but we were all in the same office. We were the landlords. And then we had a firm that maybe we had 4 or 5 employees for ourselves. When I was in real estate, I used to have subcontracting teams. It's a different mindset. It's a different job when you're trying to run a business managing people versus entrepreneurial. And I think we also see that in some of the larger companies, not in the agency model, but like in some of the bigger startups that are famous. There was always, like in the early days, the renegade entrepreneur who essentially did everything top down. And in some of them, unfortunately, it still stays that way, like the Elon Musk and stuff. But at some point, I think there's a differential between whether you're going to have a lot of people running on the staff or an individual business. And in today's world, the advantage is that a single person can distribute their knowledge much more efficiently and more profitably by using the tools that didn't exist before, like even just manual work, like web work. You used to outsource. I'm not saying that's dead, but like outsourcing versus automation.
Outsourcing is now called arbitrage.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting conversation too, right? So let's break it down because I like to give some actionable things. First of all, what comes to mind is there's maybe like 2 or 3 things that are solopreneur type businesses that work well. 1, high ticket relationship type services or knowledge. So it's one-to-one, but your lawyer's salary, please. I like to say I'm in that business to a certain degree. 2, arbitrage, which is I go out and I find the clients, I massage the clients, and then I bring the clients back and somebody does all the work. And the clients don't necessarily know or care. 3, it's a traditional agency that, again, there may be a virtual way to get it done without having people on staff, but you have a team of regular people and they may actually do the sales or the onboarding or the customer support. They're not hiding behind a paywall, pretending not to be there. Let's break out those businesses and talk about like what our experiences are and what might be an interesting way to do things given the tools that we have.
Yeah, sounds good.
You start, because I know I've never done the third thing. I mean, other than in law and so forth. I've done the first and the second thing, and they have varying degrees of success. But like as of today, I really like the first thing. So, but which ones have you tried?
Yeah, like for me, the first one is what I'm pivoting myself into, but also like I like getting my hands dirty in certain tasks and certain things. So I'm a big fan of, for example, like the E-Myth, where you have the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur as like the 3 hats you have to wear. And for me, I'm currently on the agency specialist side of things, where most of my client work is me hands-on, getting dirty, laying the foundation, getting the work done, and only really outsourcing particular tasks. But for me, I'm definitely transparent with them and let them know, like, hey, this part of the task is going to be outsourced to someone else. Or like I had a client just recently who needs Facebook ads. And I'm like, look, I'm not a Facebook ads person. I'm not going to go find someone and put a markup on top of that person. This is where I become more of like the consultant, where I'm going to find someone else for you that I trust and bring them into the project. And you deal with them directly. You're paying them. I'm just going to keep my eyes on top of things. And the way that works out in my favor is I'm definitely much more technical. I have the entrepreneur side. I'm not a fan of having to manage people. So I've been able to leverage technology and services, fill that gap of having to manage things in the business where I could have other people do the things I'm not that great at.
I mean, if you had to choose something, and I think this falls into the category of the most important thing to consider. If you had to pick a job that you had to do 24/7, what would it be? I mean, for example, I love the creative and development side of making new ideas in business. I really love coding, but like as far as making a living, the thing that gets me the most success and profit is just providing answers as to what is today's way of doing stuff. In other words, the interaction with human beings seems to be my own superpower. And though I like making videos and I like writing code and I like automating things, I like to say, if I can grab your arm and rub you like this, I'm going to get you to say yes to anything. And so for me, I think it's like the salesmanship and the marketing part. And as long as I can charge what's of value, but still lawyer salary. I mean, I charge $300 an hour for hands-on stuff. But what I say to people, and I think it's backed up by facts, is that an hour with me for $300 is like 10 hours with somebody who doesn't know anything. And, you know, you're paying the same amount of money, relatively speaking, maybe, you know. What do you think?
Essentially, they're paying to save time. For me, my superpower would be, it's the coaching aspect of things, like helping guide people down the right path, letting them know what to expect. So a lot of it's the planning out of a project of where things need to go and making sure that the client's experience is as smooth as possible. So the strategy and the coaching side, and the coaching, because there is coaching for clients, there's a lot of educating on their side of things they need to understand. So for me, like there are clients that will come in for SEO, they have no idea what it is. And like, yeah, I could keep this relationship where you know nothing, but the better I educate you, the more value you see in what I'm doing. And my goal is to eventually make you as autonomous as possible in particular tasks.
I think each of us have to fill in with a tool or with help the places that we don't know how to do things. But the problem I find happening is when you've got something that is not quite certain yet and you still have to figure it out, it's very hard to outsource it. It's very hard to automate it, right? So let's do a couple examples of that, because like, let's say I chose option number one. It's a business where I'm just going to run it myself, charge a high amount of money, but I want to have a recurring revenue aspect of it. So like with Launch Kit, soon to be Minute Launch, the idea was to compete with an all-in-one CRM type of product, but based on WordPress. But the thing that we're delivering is essentially $47, $60, or $97 a month relationship that can be scalable, because most of what the value comes from is the software, the hosting, or unlimited email. And unlimited email I can manage because I'm talking about the IKEA furniture in the IKEA furniture store that I run. Versus if somebody needs more, then I go into lawyer mode and you add on $300 an hour or whatever. When it comes to like that type of a business, the problem every day is I get really smart people who will ask me a question and I say, that's exactly what we need to do. Now I got to systematize it, document it, make a video, put it into the warehouse, into the showroom. If I find on the checkout process or the upsell process that something isn't working, I got to code it and fix it. Or with the plugin that runs much of the mechanics, even though I've got access to lots of developers, I'm the one that has to figure out whether I like it.
So, and essentially what you're doing is the same thing you'd have to do is if you had a team of 5 or 4 people, you're gonna have to train them and you're gonna need some sort of documentation. And the big part for the person who's running that solopreneur business, and if they're doing more of a consultative, is there are parts of the process that need to be documented and processed, which could then be helped out if you're on vacation and someone needs to be on board. You could then have someone pitch in or tag in for that period of time to get those particular things done for you on your behalf while you're away.
Right. And
essentially you want to build yourself out of your job. Is what you want to be doing.
I mean, the thing that I tell you all the time, like I'm a big fan of like My First Million and a lot of other podcasts. And the thing that always gets me is there's a catch behind everybody saying, well, you know, first of all, I'm 57. They're 33. Okay. When I was 33, you know, my heels were on fire and I was running a multi-million-dollar real estate empire too, because life hadn't kicked me in the nuts yet. But as it is today, I enjoy a more leisurely balanced pace, and not the least of which is because of the physical stuff, like why I'm doing knees over toes and stuff. So when it comes to like that show, what I love is they're constantly regurgitating really clever ideas about, it's easy for somebody to get enamored, like a horse with blinders on, that I'm in this space, I'm in this business, and I have to do all these things that traditionally been done. And like the knees over toes guy just ignored that and said, well, what's the outcome I want? I want to use my knee. I want to be functional again. I find that some of the ideas from those other shows are tremendous. Like I heard him talking about, I'm a pilot too. These dudes that were pilots and they wanted to open up a place to store their airplanes, but there was no hangar space. So they just figured out a way to not only open an air ranch, but they bought the land funded by buying some magazines that were about flying and then getting the rich subscribers there to put up the money for the land. And it was like, that was like such an amazing Spencer Foreman in his 30s idea. So when I think about WordPress, when I think about running the digital agency, when I talk about the space, today I gave a hint about it. One of the things that I get a lot of response from, and I think even one of my friends is just logged in there, Deneen, I have a Gen X and older friend group, client group, whatever. And we all share things that have to do with our health, our well-being, our mindset, our children, our like living life in the third trimester. So I was just in my head saying, I don't want to add more stuff, but I've already got a list of people that are probably aligned with that. And have already said things like, Spence, I'd wish you'd talk more about the motivation and like how you overcame these things and how you simplified and focused. Cause that's what I'm doing all day long anyway, just to get out of bed. So the goal of this singular focus would be not to limit yourself to just one way of doing things or one business, but to probably be keeping your eye on the prizes as they come up. Like every day, a new idea might be right at the tip of your nose. And it's not like you're giving up everything you knew. It might be that the same client base just really wanted something else from you.
Yeah. And that just comes back to listening, right? It's people are having a conversation, you're getting emails back and forth. It's just that comes down to that sense of communication, being clear and taking the feedback and working with that. And I think another important aspect in the can one person run a profitable business is you got to know your numbers. You got to make the numbers work in your favor. And it's what makes me chuckle when looking at a lot of things online. It's like, yeah, you got to charge 50% more to make your profit as big as you want as this. And, you know, you got to go out there and tell them this is the rate. What I've noticed is a lot of that information is great if you have the biggest name in the space where you could command these things. But if you're someone starting off for the first time, if you're a smaller name, you don't need to be putting 70% profit margin over a service that you're giving someone, because you giving them maybe 40% profit margin on top of that has a much more longevity than with you. And then over the customer lifetime value, what's it worth making 70% off of 2 payments or 40% off of 20 different payments over the course of time?
Well, I mean, I think one of the business ideas that works for me, if we're talking about running a solo agency, a solo digital thing, is I want to use the word curation, but curation with like a humanity niche. So here's where it comes down. There's a few newsletters I subscribe to. Again, kind of like still along the lines of stuff we just talked about, right? Like Spence List is for Gen Xers, or, you know, the knees over toes guy, or the back mechanics guy, or, you know, like whatever. All of them have a specific niche that literally allows people to know that's the girl or the guy that does this thing. It seems to me that one can succeed by curating content of a very specific type from this gushing gargantuan waterfall of stuff that shows up every day on the doorstep. Because for most people, they're busy with their day, their lives, their business, their kids, their whatever. And the value proposition doesn't have to be super expensive, but you can get a lot of people to give you a reasonable amount of money on a recurring basis for something as simple as a curated newsletter. You know, like Sahil Bloom, I listen to. The guy's a rocket. He's like barely 30 something, but he's got his kid and his 12 pack, and he's got popularity, and he's good looking, and he's smart. And he gives these really great daily bites, which he puts it in a format that I appreciate because I don't have to wallow through it. I don't pay for his premium stuff, but there's a probability that I would, right? And if at some point it triggered me into that. But here's the neat thing about that too. Let's take the idea of somebody who chooses to be a solo marketing agency.
Yeah.
Maybe it turns out that your customer is not the client that you used to do marketing services for, but instead you flip it around. For example, if you get a list of people who are interested in your knowledge, your curation, your whatever, the income doesn't come from the clients anymore that are reading it. It comes from the marketing people or advertisers who have stuff that they want to get in front of your audience. So like, I don't have to give Sahil money because he's getting paid by all the people who advertise. And I am happy to be one of the people that constantly opens the stuff.
And I think also if you're starting, right? There's we talk about niche, it's more than just the demographic of business you're targeting. It could also be you niching down in a particular service delivery that you're outputting. And that alone could, you're niching down into one output, which could lead to many different demographics of people you're helping. Or you can niche a certain demographic and have to give out many different outputs. Where the dream is you niche one demographic and you have one output. Whereas you could say I do email marketing only for beauty brands versus just being an email marketing specialist.
I mean, here's the thing. There's lots of tasks and tools that previously required a gatekeeper. So digital video editing in the old days required like a special computer and a Pinnacle hardware card and like hours of your day and all this other stuff that you had to know. Blah, 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 blah. Most of the tools and technology are democratized now. But what that means is, in my view, there are enormous numbers of very, very small niche one-off type services that by themselves, one client would not do anything for you, but that you can oftentimes turn your services around and offer to a larger audience who'd be happy to pay you X amount per month for the basics. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that that's what I've been doing for some time, and that's what Launch Kit Minute Launch ends up being, because like since the beginning of 2006 or whatever, I've always had a half a dozen to a dozen clients paying, let's say, about $100 a month for me to just host or babysit their stuff. Like that's just old-fashioned, agency type model.
Yeah.
If you combine that with something that offers the software or offers the other advice or offers whatever, it's actually a reasonable model, especially if you leave out the hosting nowadays, because it's not really that complicated. It's a reasonable model to say, hey, I'm a single company. I don't have any employees. It's 98% profit. Like other than some basics, like if I have 500 clients at $100 a month, that's $50,000 a month. That's not chicken, or whatever. So I think that's like a goal that I personally aspire to. And the constant struggle is, I like to use the term shiny ball syndrome. So if you're an employee of a larger agency, it's a different story. But when you're the solopreneur, I go through these cycles. I had a up and down this week, especially because of the physical stuff that it's my challenges. I'm getting better, but like the challenges of the physical stuff or just could be kids or could be life or whatever. You just have these, life sucks. And you get frustrated and you go like, I just wish there was something that was plopped into my lap that was easy. But what I have to keep reminding myself is using my, list of stuff on my computer here, paper computer, is that like the businesses that win are the ones where you just keep putting a nickel in the jar every day and you stay focused on that. Because if you keep bouncing around, you end up like the dog chasing its tail.
And that is, I'm guilty of it. I think everyone's going to be guilty of it. And I was thinking about that a few weeks back, and I think part of it stems from, it's not so much shiny object syndrome. I think it's more doubt than anything else, because we doubt this may work. Let me go find something else. And then I can't say that this failed because now I'm doing something else, versus riding this all the way through to either success or failure.
I mean, failure and success, that's another, we've talked about this ourselves in another show, but like, that's an interesting topic too. So I would say, being the old man of the group, I have found my hero's journey, the arc up and down and over the hill and stuff. I was very fortunate, circumstances, luck, whatever. Like the first trimester of my life was relatively unscathed. I didn't have too much trauma or dramatic stuff. I got very lucky to be curious at the right place, right times, took advantage of certain opportunities, financially found dumb luck, some really, really good financial success. Then when I got to the second trimester and started families and stuff, life had the last laugh. And over the course of 30 to 40 and 40 to 50 and 50 to 60, I've been at the brunt of the joke. But in a weird way, not, because what I feel happens, and I saw a quote from several people on this actually today, ironically, it's like, I think if somebody doesn't get kicked in the cojones by life, you really don't succeed, because first of all, you'll be bored out of your mind. Second of all, you just be I'd be a monster. I mean, many people might think I'm a monster now, but like, I feel like I have a lot of empathy and compassion because of all the things gone through. But if you don't have these things happen, I don't think you can appreciate the third trimester for me, which is, I'm not seeking to become a multimillionaire again. I have already been through romantic stuff and having kids and lots of relationships. I'm like a typical, modern Gen Xer, which is, I just want to chill. I just want to enjoy hanging out with really smart people and helping them out, and like all this, woo woo. So when I listen to like My First Million and stuff, I hear them kind of getting it, because you can almost feel like the top of the hill coming up on them, even though financially they're both set for life because they had early success. Like at a certain point, money isn't the issue. It's what do you want to do every day? Because most people nowadays in a modern world are not retiring at 60 or 70.
Never gonna happen.
It's a thing you're gonna do.
And I like that, because like when I started my entrepreneur journey, I had dreams and aspirations of, I'm gonna make millions of dollars, next biggest thing out there. And you real quickly realize, like, it's just like sports. Are you willing to put the hours of work, constantly going to practice to all the games to be the one at the top of the top? And that may not be your faith. But one of the lessons I got from, I forget which book, was either Company of One or the $1 million one person business. It was this consultant. He's like, what I do is I have a number I need to make in the year, and this number helps me for the rest of my life. Once he makes that income per year, he takes the rest of the year off and goes skiing.
Great
idea. So by like November or October, if he hits it, that's it. Tells the clients, I'm going to see you guys in January, and goes skiing. And I realized, I'm like, what's the reason I'm aiming to make all this money? We're all aiming to make this money is to be able to do things. And I know that once you get into this rat race and rabbit hole of making it, you're not going to take the time out to relax and take a break, because you're so into it. Got to keep going, got to keep going, got to keep chasing for more. And I think this guy's point of having a number to hit, and once the number's hit, pump off the brakes and go enjoy time.
I mean, the real thing, the question it comes down to is this. It's a little Viktor Frankl, Man's Meaning of Life. But like, why does somebody make money? I mean, sounds dumb, right? We live in a capitalist world where I'm a very spiritual person first. And I don't mean woo-woo. I mean, like, I just think we're spiritual beings playing a game here as human beings. But the system that works for getting stuff done has demonstrably been capitalism in the modern era. But what I see on the third trimester I'm coming up to is that I've been a multimillionaire. I've been bankrupt. I've been everything in between. I've been single. I've been married. I've been living with people. I've had good friends. I've had friends break up. I've had all kinds of experiences. And consistently, like many people who have been successful and talked about this have said, a certain amount of money is absolutely required for comfort and for the feeling of stability. It becomes a little more challenging in today's society because, again, inflation just bopped up 17% suddenly. But for the most part, we're living the best life historically we ever have, even though things are more expensive. But really what it comes down to is having your total focus being how much money you make or how many companies you make. I even hear Sam and Sean on that show talking about it, and you can kind of hear like they're feeling, because it's almost like if you ate at your favorite steak restaurant or choose your expensive food every night, it's like, how am I going to top the last night? Like filet mignon on filet mignon on filet mignon on Chateaubriand on top of the best wine. And like after a couple hundred nights of that, you're just like, take me to the Dunkin' Donuts. So I think it's got to be something more about profit being success in your mind, success in relationships, success in the balance of your life, success in things that are permanent, which I'd say relationships, family, and things of that nature are. But then I'm a little disappointed, but I'm realistic. Why? About when I grew up versus today, we didn't have the spread of wealth. Like in those days, kids, people were poor, like really poor. And there was unfortunately a lot of reasons that were racism and otherwise. and they were rich. But the spread between poor and rich was like, I'm holding my fingers an inch apart. Today, the spread between rich and poor is like a yard, and there's nothing in between, which is the problem of compounding of capitalism, compounding of leverage, compounding of tax and politics, compounding of technology. And that leads to bad results for society, like 12th century, Marie Antoinette kind of stuff. Or no, that's more like 18th century. But, the idea is like, it doesn't end well when there's no middle and there's no hope for somebody to move from the bottom to the top.
Yeah. And I think a big part there too, that's where people this is turning off the one person business thing, but people are then going to look at capitalism as being the bad thing. But at the same time, it's people only make money if you buy their product or services. And the part that always fascinates me, it's like, I love it during COVID. It's like, oh, nobody has money, but Visa and MasterCard made the most money they've ever made historically. And it's like, oh, people are losing jobs, but sales are going up through things. And I think it comes down to, are we spending money on things that we want or things that we need? And oftentimes we're chasing the things we want to make us feel good when the things that we need is just more time with people in our relationships, more time with family and friends, and that doesn't cost anything. Well, so I think a big part of it there is responsibility on ourselves as consumers to where are we voting with our dollars.
We saw some things in the news today, like, okay, you could talk about basic needs, housing, transportation, food, education. Okay. I don't care who you are. It seems very illogical to me that you should be against those things basically being affordable for everybody, because it just cannot possibly end well when people cannot afford a place to live, even rent or buy. They can't afford lunch for their kids or themselves. They can't afford medical. Like, those things are what cause riots. That's what cause revolution. But in terms of like happiness and so forth, I think like for our conversation, for entrepreneurs, for solopreneurs, there are weird advantages. Okay, so I'm going to throw another weird reference, but I don't really think much of this guy. Maybe I shouldn't even say his name, but there's a guy on the internet. He's a Texan, and he's sells his courses. His name's Grant something, and he's always talking about like these gigantic purchases in order to write off taxes in the same year. And he's saying like the federal tax law says if you buy a car that's 6,000 pounds, you can write off $158,000 in that same year. And he's talking to people, and I'm like, Mr. Grant, how many people do you know that have 160 grand of cash to throw off that are buying your course? Like, it seems very unrealistic. Versus what makes sense is that, let's say you're talking about writing off part or all of your home as an office expense. Healthcare under I think we still call it the Obamacare, but like, the Affordable Health Care Act.
Software.
Things that you will qualify for software. Like, there's numerous numbers of ways where the system that's set up is so screwed up. And this is like where the wealthy really take advantage of it. For example, if you are at the top, you never take a salary. You never take a W-2. You take everything in the form of equity or options or stock. Then you buy an asset or use that as the asset and borrow against it. And you have access to unlimited capital without ever having a taxable event. Ever, never, never. That's what real estate's about. That's what equities, and how many normal waiters and waitresses and entrepreneurs get to choose that? On the other hand, if you are a solopreneur in technology, you can do a one-person LLC, and you can get away with doing things that are completely the same degree of legal, writing off certain expenses, doing certain things. And if you don't pay yourself a salary, but instead take a dividend or otherwise, you actually can afford yourself similar leverage, which really emphasizes my point, which is if you choose to run a smaller company and you essentially take less money through the traditional salary method or not at all through a dividend method, you can get more leverage than the poor schmuck who's got to get a W-2, or you set up a C Corp and you're a salaried employee of your own company, because then you're getting taxed twice. You're not getting your right stuff off. And the codes and all these other stuff are not obvious to normal people, but they do go, I think, hand in hand with, well, what if I ran a profitable agency that maybe it was one person and I used the tools that are available and I was able to essentially get $250,000 or $300,000 worth of benefits that cost me nothing, or $50,000, versus I had to make $600,000 and give half of it away in tax in order to pay.
And all that just comes down to just knowing the rules of the game. It's like, if we're going to play Monopoly, you got to learn the rules of Monopoly to understand it. The example of Grant Cardone with the buy the car in a solopreneur's case is, if you have a software you're paying every month and it's coming towards the end of the year, you could choose to pay for a year price up front, and that could help you with your tax deductibles. Like, it's all a measure of scalability. You don't have to go out there and say you got to get a Jeep Wrangler. That's not the point. It's just seeing what are the things you have, understanding the rules of where you're located, and making it work on your behalf. It's like when I used to work at the gym, I'd buy Lululemon pants and shirts. Guess what? That was deductible because I'd be a coach. But at the same time, it's clothes I wear every day. So it was a win-win in my case.
You know, it's interesting because there's a lot of things when it comes to the tools, when it comes to how you get paid, when it comes to whatever. One of the things that when I had the surgeries on the back, I was really concerned about, but I think that as a solopreneur, we were talking, having a recurring revenue aspect to your business is a huge difference, because while it is true that that lawyer salary thing kicks in, and I have people who pay $300 an hour, $2,500 or $5,000 for 2-week or 4-week kind of engagements, if you will. The truth is that that is not a sustainable business to have an infinite number of people at $5,000. Nobody can do that by themselves. That's where you'd have to go to that model number 2 or number 3. Like, you know, you'd have to have a ghost staff, or you'd have to have like a real crew. But the first one, that's been the whole point of this conversation, let's say, where we turn the tables around. I know a very successful WordPress newsletters. WP Weekly is one of them. You know, it's Devinder Singh, I believe. And I talked about it. He was laughing because he's just aggregating news and he has advertisers. So it built up a very nice following of people and readership, which attracted more advertisers. I'm not saying he's making a fortune from it, but he shared with me what he's making, and it's a very, very healthy revenue. For me, I found over the last 6 months to a year that the Launch Kit Minute Launch was an amazing way for me to shift the focus away from what I had been doing with a team of people, which was managing clients with random Frankenstein sites, and instead forcing them into buying the IKEA solutions from me, because then I can wear the vest and document it, albeit it does take effort. And you and I have been talking about how we're expanding that out. You're going to participate to a certain extent, I hope, where if we get everybody to stop arguing, or at least a large number, and start using the thing, everybody sees value in either the software part of it, the software plus the support, or even the software support and hosting, because they come and they say, why isn't WordPress being delivered this way? Like, why should it be so difficult? And it's just one aspect of the service, but you'll find that many other agencies are going in the same way. They've built like their own white label version of something like that.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that's important to touch on is what I've noticed a lot in the past few years, especially since COVID, is everyone's focused on MRR, monthly recurring revenue, which is obviously the end goal of where you want to get to. But I think just like life, as in business, there's different stages.
Right.
And that first stage, you just got to focus on being profitable and getting as many eyeballs, getting as many different clients, building that essentially that network around your business. And then on that second phase, you can then start focusing on the monthly recurring, because if you're going to put the same energy into getting a monthly recurring at a lower rate versus getting a higher front-end fee and getting more people at a higher front-end fee, you're going to be stuck in a position where if that one recurring client leaves, you're not screwed. Versus getting that funnel coming in of people paying a higher upfront fee, you get that money coming in, you put some money aside and save, which is the most important part of things. And then you slowly transition people off into the monthly recurring. It's like, hey, Bob, you've been paying me $5,000 every 2 months for the past 3 years. I have a new service offering. Instead of $5,000, it's just $1,000 or $750 a month. Same service, same quality, but at this point, it's easier on your pockets. And I'm able to just keep working and working without having to worry about stopping and waiting for an invoice to be paid. So that sounds like something you like? Yeah, it makes my life easier. I'm paying you less. And sure, I'll do the recurring fee because I know the quality of work we've done for the past 2 or 3 years. I trust you to keep doing a monthly recurring payment. And I find that's a much more honest way of going about things for people that are starting out.
We talked about this at the beginning of today's show. It's a challenge when you have a larger project or a engagement fee because it's cyclical. So you'll get somebody who will come in and they're like, I need to get off the ground, and $2,500, $5,000 for what I'm getting is like crazy value, considering agencies start at $25,000, $30,000. And if you hybridize it, right? So if you have the upfront 5Gs, it's efficient delivery because it's IKEA pre-made solutions, but it's the same results, just we've already figured them out. And then they go into the 97. I have found that that leads to what I was talking about this morning, which is the customer number 4, the recurring customer, because they get the thing moving, they start succeeding, and then they're like, what else can I do? And I've had customers come to me frequently enough that they say, I need to do more. I want to go back into another engagement. But even if they don't, I think one begets the next. And even though I'm still a solopreneur, one of the things I'm looking forward to is that I feel like the marketplace of WordPress. I mean, one of the Don Quixote carrying my, I don't know if it's Don Quixote or Robin Hood, like I'm built in windmills, is WordPress is so obviously in need of this. And so I was arguing the other day in a Facebook group, a bunch of people were just snipey, that this is not taking the opportunity away from developers or small creators. In fact, I think it's the opposite. What I'm really shooting for is to create a democratized system. First of all, being that the partners that I will be announcing on July 5th already produce many of the top plugins and stuff with me anyway. But number 2 is we're trying to counterbalance those other private companies I've mentioned that are just trying to put it all in their little cage. Like this morning's news about Adobe, who decided after 35 years that all your data is theirs. Take it or leave it, sucker. Well, if there's not somebody out there that's acting in the best interest of all the little guys, including the creators, and when I say in the best interest, being able to take the little guys stuff and either promote it, or we're doing this Hunt Brothers pizza style that we've talked about but not explained. Like,
but it's crazy because I saw the group messages and people are upset, and to me it's wild because we're in a space where, especially for the WordPress space, it's a flea market, and the people with the biggest names get the best booth at the entrance of the door. If you're new, you're schlepped all the way in the back, and there's only one entrance. No one's going to see you. And the thing is, like, what incentive do people have to start building a product for a platform where you never get visibility or seen? And we all know people have new ideas.
You never get, like, you get crushed by black hat tactics and dark patterns and everything else.
Yeah. And if you think about it also, if you're the big company, you see a smaller company comes in, is building something that's important, that's great, like, just you acquire them. Just do what Amazon does, do what everybody else has been doing for years. But if no one's building anything new, no one's there to acquire anything. These companies are at a size and scale. They don't always have time to innovate for new things. They're just sitting and waiting to say, okay, this guy's doing something good. This looks like it'd be a good fit. And one example I was listening to, I think, Jamie, he created Pi Calendar, he was explaining about it. And the guy on the other host is like, I had no idea it existed. It's like, yeah,
what was it? Pi Calendars?
Pi Calendar?
Yeah.
Pi Calendar. It's the event plugin that's based off of the posts.
Right.
And I'm like, this is a genius idea. But if no one's there to talk about it or push it out inside of a sweet kit of products where it's like, this is a kit, here's everything you need. Oh, what's this new one? He's only putting it here because it must be something I may need.
Okay, so let's put that practically into context. The issue is really simple. WordPress was always this cute little community of us all rah-rah contributing. Oh, that's so cool. You made this and we could share. And it's evolved into, just like everything else in the end stage capitalism, there are a few companies, Automatic, Osmotive, WP Engine, I could go down the list, that have the money and the power and the incentive because they're driven by shareholder value or by personal founder morals or lack thereof to just buy up everything, crush everything, use any tactic possible to just get everybody either acquired or crushed or suppressed. And when I say that, I mean it literally speaking, because in the early days, you could just be a solopreneur, come up with a clever idea and get enough attention from the rah-rah community. You can't compete against that now when $100 million a year company is using black hat tactics and outright lying to their customers. But more importantly, when the actual platform is run amok, changing stuff. So where I see what the WordPress part of it is, those that believe that there's integrity and honesty and open source and values and things, we can make a fair playing field that still delivers value, but it can be a trickle down and trickle up thing. For example, that Hunt Brothers pizza, again, this was brought up by Sean at My First Million. This is a business that realized there's like 50 to 100,000 gas stations around the United States that, like, are looking for ways to make more money. So they put these little mini pizza ovens and they sell the supplies to the gas station owners who basically keep all the profits. They just buy the supplies. Well, with Minute Launch, we're going to be providing that to all of the hosting companies, to all the small developers, to any agency owner, to just sell it and keep 50% of the profit. But you can also get your stuff put into it and distributed with it. Now, what that means is you can stop hassling yourself of trying to figure out something valuable and start selling the thing that's already proven to be valuable. And you're essentially keeping half of the money.
The part too that's crazy there too is WordPress is a space where people have to create a free product and a paid product. And if the free product is bundled in a kit and someone's paying for the kit, they're paying to not have to go through the flea market. If I get a personal shopper and I'm rich enough and I have 2 hours while my flight takes off, I'm paying the personal shopper to save me time to know where I'm going. And we're talking about these big behemoths of brands, and the irony is like people will complain that Google and Facebook get too big, but then when it comes to here, it's like, oh no, it's cool, they're fine. It's like, no, it's the same. The same rules got to apply everywhere.
Because in the world that we're living in, like, listen, open source is a specific thing where it's legally, demonstrably, this is normal. The code is not what people are been buying. They never have been. But these other companies are taking advantage now by locking it down and doing stuff with serial numbers and lying to people, saying, you're buying the code, it's not yours to do. Your children will be taken from you and put in a van if you don't give us, like, I've seen warnings from some of these companies. And then I have to like put on my lawyer hat and go, and here's the GPL, GNU license. But in other industries, you see this happening, like we talked about Adobe shenanigans, and you see about right to repair shenanigans, and you see lots of examples of this in the real world where the leverage of having like control over somebody's assets or their lives or their content or whatever lets one company become a de facto monopoly or change the marketplace. And one of the things that I just think is overdue is that the technology is demonstrating how quickly they're changing as well. Like Google had everybody by where for 30 years now. And then overnight, AI made everybody go, oh, I guess they've been lying to us the whole time. They've been optimizing for selling ads, not for actually giving best results. And it's like, really? It took you that long to figure it out? And when you see what Adobe does, and you've seen what Microsoft does, and you see AI, OpenAI changing their motto from this to that, and the world is not fair. Capitalism is far from perfect. People have a decision to make. They can buy stuff based upon relationships with real people they trust. And there are still many, many, many examples of this in the real world. Yeah. You can look at Craig Neimark from Craigslist. Like, that company's killing it. I don't hear or see Craig Neimark anywhere trying to like optimize or capture people in 7-stage, cancellation processes for putting an ad on Craigslist, because he's an honest dude. And I think that that's what we're trying to do here is say, you're in a world as a solopreneur, maybe. The best thing you can sell, the best thing is to find other like-minded, honest people with integrity to sell their stuff, optimize what they're doing so you can do it, but get in relationships with people, because the people are going to find that, like, I have to move this house. I'm calling movers. I got a bad back and I got 2 kids, but like, I'm not moving my shit from one house to another. I'm calling movers, right? And I'm going to trust the mover when I meet them, that looks me in the eye, shakes my hand, and makes me feel comfortable. It's not just about like the biggest advertising or some campaign. And if they gave me some shenanigans, like this happened to me 2 months ago with my kid's car breaking, it was out of state, like some shenanigans, like, you got to put your credit card in before we can talk to you. And I'm going to be like, no. So, I mean, we could go on and on, but like, I think that's the thing that to me is what we're doing, what we can do, and all of the people in our audience can choose to do. Like in any business, whether it's yoga or hair cutting or digital online stuff.
Yeah. And one way to time the whole situation with there's big, larger companies taking advantage of the little guys. Yes, they have power, but having the knowledge and understanding the rules of the game is your leverage and your advantage into getting in or expanding or growing the business that you have. Is no matter what you're doing, there is going to be a bigger competitor. And one of the big examples I like is you have Hertz Rental, and you have I forget the red logo guy, Avis. And for years, Avis has been number 1 for years, and Hertz Hertz ran ads saying it's like, hey, we know we're number two, but it's because we're number two is the reason we try harder as an ad campaign. And you being a solopreneur, the benefit you have is like, look, when a client calls you, they're talking to you. They're not going to be talking to somebody lower down the chain who just started 6 months ago, or somebody who hired an agency somewhere else overseas. You could leverage you being a person with that whole person-to-person marketing to get that connection, to get that client, and to increase that longevity with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, we talked this morning about Tiffany box versus Costco wholesale diamond ring. Okay. There are times when the perception of the quality and so forth come from the brand, come from the blue box, come from whatever. But for the most part, that's because if you go to a Tiffany's, there's real people selling you. Like, when you go to a Bugatti dealer, I imagine, because I've not been to one, but I've been to a Mercedes dealer. It's not self-service. It's not like going to the Chevy place or the Ford place. It's not like, hey, good old boy. It's like, look, I'm going to give you a different level of experience. Like, I use the example because it's not expensive, but you being a Canadian originally, when I go to Toronto, I stay the Four Seasons, their original place, because it's not expensive relative to anything, but definitely not relative to what I get. I like the quality of everything being like top, and the person there treating me. And if it means that I have to go on a 4 for the price of 3 day and use a coupon, God bless me. But that's where I'm saying, in a world of infinite AI, in a world of infinite black hat marketing, in a world of infinite money being thrown at certain companies trying to acquire everybody, I believe that, and I'm excited to say this. I mean, I don't want to like posture because I'm just one dude, but like, I think there are many of the people behind me as well as doing this as well that feel the future is in humanity versus bigger corporations and AI. I mean, like, bigger corporations have infinite funds to crush little guys, and the government does not seem to be pro antitrust in any way, shape, or form. The little guys can compete by saying, and we can kind of use this as a turning point to wrap this up, like, I don't need 100 million customers. I don't need 10,000 customers. I need like a few hundred, a few thousand customers who pay me enough in a scalable way that I can do the things that are really important for them. But at the same time, I don't have to hire 800 people anymore. And I think each of us go back to almost like, it's very weird, full circle, but like, there was the blacksmith, there was the horseshoe guy, and there was the baker and the candlestick maker, and everybody was like a craftsman job because everybody knew they were the one to go to. And even, I would say, bartering is a big factor. We didn't talk about it today, but like, how do you get more profit out of a small agency? Barter with your clients. For example, I've had 3 kids that went to $13,000 a year for 10 years. Do some math on it. I mean, barter is a good old-fashioned way of doing things. So,
And if I think of, give 3 actionable steps, like 3 ideas for people when it comes to being a one-person business and how to make your life easier, there are 3 things that could be easily done. Is 1, you could have tools and systems set up that when an invoice is sent, reminders to those who haven't paid is automatically sent out on your behalf. So you're not having to get someone for accounts receivables. Another one could be just using your calendar to give yourself a reminder that it's your Bob's client's birthday, it's his son's anniversary. Those little tidbits you hear from someone on the phone, put that in there. And a third simple one is you could schedule an SMS or a text message out and be like, hey, just cross my mind, want to check in, see how things are going. An unbusiness related message just to kind of get more of that personal stuff. And these are 3 things that are, well, one's definitely paid, the other 2 are fairly much free. And it's those little things that is part of your business. You know you need to do it, but we never put it as a high importance because we're so focused on every action we take focus on generating revenue. But these little things, it what keeps that stickiness. And that's the easiest thing you could potentially try to automate.
I mean, that's a great idea. And I will add a couple things to the end of that because I love it. First of all, I'm a bling whore. I have all the shirts. I have all that. Anybody who sends me stuff, old-fashioned, T-shirts, hats, whatever, in the mail, I immediately go, I don't know what the hell they're doing, but I got to find out. I mean, if they haven't otherwise introduced themselves. But one of the other things that's really interesting, and you said it could be for free. I've got enormously positive feedback from old customers or people on my list when I did nothing more than just wrote. It was still relatively automated, but it was like a paragraph that looked like it was directly from me. It said, I just read this article today and I thought about you. Hey, Chris, I just read this article about X, and I thought about your company blankety blank. You got to make it sound personal. It has to be personal. But the point is, even if you wrote 100 of those, it'd be worth the time, because like they go, thanks, Spence. Haven't heard from you in a while. And if you remember specific details, and that's worked out for me too, because this morning I was talking about how like that recurring customer is oftentimes that project customer, but then they come back 2 years later for more project, not like that they're on retainer $5,000 a month. And I think
that adds to the customer lifetime value. If you zoom out long enough, that person who's there in month one could come back with a way larger project.
I always wonder, because I'm getting lazier in my old age just from the same idea of not wanting to kill it. But like when I hear those stories of businesses that are amazing, the ones that really ring my bell are not the ones, because by the way, I love making software. I love doing creative stuff. I love making videos, but I do that like ad hoc every day differently, and then I'm done. What really drags me down is even in these $5,000 relationships, like if you do 5 or 6 or 8 clients a month, you're doing really well for $5,000. Let's not kid ourselves. But I can't do 8 clients at $5,000 a month. I can't. I could do like 3 or 4, maybe 5. And then my brain is just a vegetable, because like you can't be the fiduciary on trial. Like I used to be a trial lawyer. I can't have 5 trials going on in 1 month. I mean, it's just impossible. It'd be like having 5 spouses or 25 children. And I just don't know that that's a good idea anyway. You know, the overemployed thing on Reddit, you know, like I have 3 jobs. So I think that you have to balance out for yourself. But the idea is that if you can find a sweet spot where you can encourage people to go, hey, what's up? And then the last thing we talked about, which for everybody, get some kind of a recurring revenue system in place, even if it's as simple as just managing their software updates, hopefully using Minute Launch Kit, where you just essentially take the tools we give you, keep half the profit, and then do the business with the people every month. Like if we make it super easy by giving you the wholesale thing, there's no excuse for you not to do it. And if you're a developer or a creative person, you can create stuff that works with LaunchKit and then sell it to the same audience of other people using LaunchKit for their clients, like Canva with Etsy templates. So I'm going to wrap it up on this because we're near the top of the hour. I mean, I think both of us agree, because we talked about before, that we're going to shift the topic towards more of the practical things that have to do with, I'd like to call it minute solutions. I mean, these are long form conversations, but the notion of here's some practical things that you can do for business ideas or business ideas that other people are using Minute Launch Kit for, in the way that allows you to not have to reinvent yourself, but rather to go, that IKEA thing looks really great, and I know exactly where I have some clients that'd be interested in it.
Yeah, and I'll just give 3. I got 3 little show and tell objects to help for the people that are doing the 1-person businesses. One example is Company One by Paul Jarvis. Fantastic read. That's where I got the idea of the person who takes off once they make their number and go skiing for the rest of the season. Another good book is The $1 Million 1-Person Business by Elaine. I can't pronounce that last name.
You're going to send me these links, so I'll put it in the video.
And the classic book, Profit Verse by Michalowicz. It's, to give you the summary, it's sales minus profit equals expense. It's not sales minus expense equals profit. Sales minus profit equals expense.
Which is ironically lost on a lot of people, because even, I don't know why people are into vanity metrics, but like even when it comes to YouTube, for example, right? Like I use YouTube as a tool, that's me. But like, if you look at a kid today with Legos, they get to 12 million viewers. There, it's real money. But even then, they're getting a really small amount of money for the amount of time spent. Not like they're not making money, but like, okay. But when you're in the WordPress space or the tech space, like, most people are like 10,000. I have 6,700 or 7,000. It hasn't moved much in the last 5 years because I don't make videos. 20,000 is a big number. I think Adam Presser has like 125,000. I think there's a couple other guys like Ferdy Kopperchek who have like 1 million. But like, when you look at like what they make off of that, when the information is revealed, you're like, that's just a fraction of the money you make from the recurring revenue, like tchotchke business.
It's like being a musician. If you're going to be the big time and you have the biggest deal, you got to sell way more albums to still get a small piece of that pie. Like it's 1% of a million sold.
Exactly. It doesn't begrudge anybody who loves to do it, but in terms of the grind and everything else, I love the idea. You have to consider your time as a cost of goods sold. You can't just pretend that like, and I'm making videos 80 hours a week, or I'm doing 900 phone calls a week.
What's your ROE? Return on effort is another important part. It's not just the return on investment. What's your return on effort? Pick your energies, your age, how much time you have left, what the runway is. Is it worth putting 27 videos out a month versus let me just do 5 or 6 and focus my energy elsewhere to get just enough as I need?
And also the personal cost, because I enjoy being on camera occasionally. I like talking in public when but it does wear on my psyche, and I promise we're wrapping up right at that. But it wears on my psyche when, for example, on Facebook or any social media, people just like pop an idea out. Like this week on Facebook, one of my clients maybe who had a free call, was very educated, very polite, posed a very sensible, honest question about what it is that we had talked about. It's just like 9 out of 10 people, including the admin of the group, who I know personally, just took a shit on the post. Like literally, like not a single moment of thought, care. It just took a shit on it. Like they were pretending they were looking at a billboard on the highway and wondering, well, was this the movie script for the biography he's writing? And why is it such a shitty biography? I'm like, you were looking at us like an office hours page where a video is and trying to figure out what the business is. And I'm like, as soon as I started to respond, I realized it takes a toll when you put yourself out there, but you have to put yourself out there. But you don't have to put yourself out there to the hundreds of millions. You can put yourself out there in a very personal way, in a very low key way. And there's lots of people in their 3rd trimester or even younger who make businesses and nobody knows who they are. Nobody cares. And I got to think that honestly, unless your goal is fame, that's a better way to make a living, not anonymously, not like with a mask on, but just like stay under the radar. Don't talk about your success. Don't talk about your income. Don't tell people how you're making and how much you're making, because everybody is just going to learn how to hate you for no other reason than just Schadenfreude, right? Yeah. And that's it. All right. We've solved all the problems of the world once again, Chris. Thank you for that. I would love those links to the books. Send me. I'll post them with the YouTube video, and then we'll see whether we continue to call it Marketing Hub Ideas. We might call it Minute Launch Ideas, something like that. But I hope if you guys listen to this and you like it, let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about or show you and share. And I think that we'll use this. We're going to see for summer if we can keep doing this on Fridays, so it'll be available the same day. I know previously it was Saturdays in the winter. That kind of turned into a drag. Well, it was easier when it's cold out, but not when, my back and my legs are going, bike, walk, get out of the house. So I appreciate you taking the time today, Chris, and everybody for joining us. And we'll see you on the next show, hopefully next Friday.
Thanks a lot. Ciao, everybody.
Till then, bye.